And we are back. Welcome to the Restoration Group podcast, where we're sometimes silly, but we are always serious about investing in Oklahoma City leaders who desire to integrate their work into their Christian faith. I'm your host, Clay Steves. We are on the final part of a 4-part series. This is called the conclusion episode. And I'm joined by both my co-hosts, Aaron Scott and Michael Mead. Aaron, you have today's episode. Why don't you take it for us?
I do. Oh, wow. Okay.
No talking.
Nope.
No
No
banter.
bantering about anything.
How we doing, team?
Oh, okay.
I'm ready for Aaron to start.
That's the only acceptable answer at this point.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great. All right. It just occurred to me. Here's my banter. It occurred to me that so we have in this series we've talked about Myers-Briggs, we've talked about Enneagram, and now we're talking about StrengthsFinder.
Yep.
I am just realizing that I think everyone here, and probably even maybe on our entire team, would know their spouse's Myers-Briggs and Enneagram. I doubt any of us know our spouse's StrengthsFinders.
Confirmed from me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, confirmed.
I definitely confirmed over here. But I think that's a great segue into, we're talking about StrengthsFinder today, everybody.
What do you think that is?
Well, I think that it's, and I was going to mention this, like, I think of the, like, air quotes here for the note for the audio, like big name personality profiles. I don't think it's like if it were a celebrity, it's like a B-list celebrity.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. There's also 5 of them as opposed to
There's 4
one
letters.
number.
There's 4 letters.
Yeah, but no. There's also
like Enneagram, you got like a wing, you got this.
okay. There's 34 strengths.
Yeah, but nobody ever talks about they talk about their top 5.
That's right.
That you could know. I'm saying, like, I just don't think it's as common to even take the test because you have to pay for it.
Oh.
There's a
okay.
That probably excludes a lot of people because you can go online and take tons of free stuff to do Enneagram or especially Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
But
what is StrengthsFinder though?
I'm so glad you asked. Thanks for bringing us back here. Okay, so a little backstory on what is StrengthsFinder, if you've not heard of it, because it's a B-list celebrity, but I think a worthy one.
We got to hear from them about that. I hope we do.
But I'm here to advocate for it. I like StrengthsFinder a lot.
Yeah.
Even if it is a B-list celebrity. So it was formed, and it's also a newer one in the big scheme of things. We talked about Enneagram as like ancient times was like the first kind of rumblings of that. And even with Myers-Briggs was formed in the 1920s versus StrengthsFinder in 2001. So like in the 2000s, which is pretty crazy. So the Gallup organization, which you may have heard that term from, like, they're like the people who poll people about stuff, you know.
I got a letter from Gallup the other day wanting me to be a Gallup pollster and stuff. It had a real dollar bill in the window, and that was their way of like trying to hook you to get you to open the thing. Just putting it on the table.
And it worked. You opened it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kept the dollar, but I did not sign up to be a Gallup pollster or whatever.
I wonder what that would be like. That'd be so interesting. Can you give it to me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So they poll people about a lot of stuff. And they developed this assessment. It was named after the then chairman, Donald Clifton. So when I first took this, it was actually called the Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment. Since then, it has now been simplified down to just be called the StrengthsFinder or the StrengthsFinder test. So just an FYI on backstory there. But they believe, that Gallup believes that through their research and development with all sorts of different types of counselors and therapists and things like that, getting into the psychology of things, that they have categorized, and this is their wording, all that's right with humankind, and distilled it down to 34 unique themes, or what they call strengths. This test measures the intensity of your talents. So not if you have them or not, but to what intensity in the 34 themes to represent what each person does best. So they call it their talent DNA is what StrengthsFinder would measure, if you will. I also noted that I think something that they do differently than some of the other personality profiles is they do heavily highlight, their wording is what is right with humankind versus, now, to be clear, you can still very easily talk about, and they do have data out there and information about, our greatest strengths can also be our greatest weaknesses, obviously. And there's a lot of reading out there about that from StrengthsFinder. But their focus, I think, compared to other personality profiles, is so much more on the what is right with humankind, on the positive nature. And I'll come back to that later because I think that's what makes it such a great tool. I know we talked about that Myers-Briggs is an easy on-ramp for bringing self-development to the workplace. I would argue StrengthsFinder is the easiest, though. And part of it is because of that, because they focus so much on what is right with humankind. So that is what StrengthsFinder is. At our company, we've mentioned this in every episode. We use that along with some other personality profiling things with our employees. This is one that we specifically use in the recruiting and interviewing process for prospective new employees. So in the interview process at a certain stage, we do ask people to take this test, and we use that data not to make a decision based off that, but to help it inform us more about this candidate, specifically in how that person's strengths may overlap or not overlap with the team that they're interviewing to be on. And we, I'll save that for later as far as like they break things up into like domains, and that's really kind of how we use it in our interview process. But there's a ton of information over there. I really like StrengthsFinder and how it overlaps with other personality profile things. But right now, we're just focusing kind of like on an Enneagram episode where it's like we're just doing the base level stuff. We are focusing on just knowing your top 5 types, not all 34 of your spouse, but your top 5. I don't even know all 34 of mine. But I will say, again, we kind of noted this on accident, but you do have to pay to take this test, and then you have to pay more if you want to. They call it like unlock, like the information on all 34, which I've only done once in my life. And it is a sad day when you see what your bottom one is, because they're not saying you don't have any of that, but it is the least. And it does not make you feel good about, like, it doesn't matter what's on the bottom. You're just going to be like, oh man, mine was empathy. I think I've grown a lot since then.
That would hurt.
I was
33?
I was like 22 years old when I did that. So like, yeah, for sure. But I think I've grown a lot since then. So, all right. Enough of me talking about this. Let's hear from you guys. I'm not going to ask you actually what your top 5 strengths are, but I am going to ask you, just when you look at your top 5, what do you think what stands out as like the most accurate and why?
So
P.S. Do you know your top 5? If not, I made a chart here.
I do. I would say my top 5 are actually different than what you have for me, because
you should update HR about that.
Yeah, I will send an email. So you're talking about how you have your top 5 and you can unlock more. So I've taken it multiple times and I've had some come in and out. So like maybe my 6 and 7 register. What has always been my top is maximizer. And I just feel like that is how I view the world on how to maximize things. And I do that at home. I do that at work. I can't not think that way on how to maximize something. What I've grown in is that when other people don't think that way, I used to think they were like lazy or unintelligent or a variety of not helpful things.
Give us when you say think that way and that you can't not think that way, what does that mean as a maximizer?
So like what happens in my brain on a Saturday when we need to run multiple errands is I automatically will route the most efficient way to maximize our time. So it's like, we need to go to this place on Penn and Memorial, and then we need to go to this place. And so I will just chart the route to, if a circle is possible, that's great. No backtracking. Like we're going A to B to C and it's going to be efficient and maximize our time. And that is just how I don't have to try to think that way. Kimberly, she could go to the first place, go home, get another drink, go back out, and that is just how she moves through the world. And even in our marriage, like I've had to work to realize she's not wrong for that. Still working on that a little bit, but that's an example of how I just think to maximize things, whether it's time or resource or energy. And that has always been a big driver for me. And this tool that was really helpful to put language to and learn and understand how to leverage, understand how it can be a liability.
It's good.
Yeah.
What about you?
So the 2 of my top 5, which are always there, is context and input. And I would say after I learned about those, it began to explain and confirm other things And I just always love the connectedness between, you kind of referenced some connectedness between things, but like I studied history. And so it was very normal for me to always be thinking about what happened in the past, how it affects the future, how there's kind of this large full picture, the full chessboard, so to speak. And that's the context. Like when I began to read it, it's like, these people love history, and they can, and it's like, oh my goodness. And I'd been doing that my whole life, thinking that was normal or the way you approach things. So that was confirming and really cool. And then recognizing, oh, wait a minute, that's a strength. That's a like talent DNA. That was the fun part for this tool for me, was to be like, oh, that's maybe not everybody has that. And I can bring that as a strength.
And it's not just like a weird random thing about you.
No.
Like it is a literal strength that you have that not everyone does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one, you know, input, which is taking in a lot of information, researching, deep diving into things. When I began to use the Enneagram and learn about its depths with integration, disintegration, and I'm a 7, right? And so how it integrates to a 5, which is the investigator, who love to go deep into. And so when I'm in a healthy spot, like those things literally begin to synergize together, and I can take in loads of data, loads of information, and then begin to sift through it, looking forwards and backwards, combining my context. And so that's been fun for me with this tool to be like, oh, that's actually, those are gifts. I wrote the word like giftings, superpowers almost that you're given, that those things. And that was fun to see those almost, you talked about in a previous episode, how it gives language to kind of elements of us already existing, but it gets common language and understanding together. Yeah.
And so when you were describing some of your like taking in a lot of information and data and stuff like that, I was thinking about you in a workplace setting, because I've seen that before, where it's like, okay, we're going to meet about this thing, and I come with like my thoughts on the issue, just whatever. And you come with like 14 graphs. And so it's like, okay. But we just think about that different. So through the workplace lens, can you guys give some examples of, or just what has been the most valuable way that you've seen this used in the workplace? For someone, like talk to someone who does not have any sort of self-development tool that they're using in their workplace right now. How could this bring value?
I think my answer to your question requires a bit of education that I might throw back to you on the executing, influencing, relationship building, strategic thinking. Can you just briefly touch on that? And then that. Great.
So StrengthsFinder, there's 34 strengths that they are identifying, but then they categorize those into 4, what they call domains. And you just read them off, but they are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And when you read some of the strengths, you might think you know what domain that falls in, and sometimes you're wrong. Myself included, like when I was going through and graphing this out, I was like, oh, I forgot that one actually falls in this domain and not this one. And so we've done that as a leadership team and as our entire team, of kind of map out and graph out not just what are the individual strengths, but what are the domains? Because if we all have 5, I remember a time where we did this with our whole team, and I think we had someone on the team at the time that like all 5 of theirs fell in one domain, which means like for that type of, and I want to say, cause I think I remember who it was. I think it was strategic thinking. And it's like, if you need to like really critically think about something, if you're not inviting this person into the discussion, you're a fool, because like they are so natural. Like you said, you can't not think this way. This person could not think strategically. And especially if the people making decision maybe had a lack there, that's how we've used the domains. I may have stepped on the toes of what you're saying.
No, you're fine.
But I'm going to jump in and hack it.
Please.
Stealing, because I was the inverse. If remembering that exercise you went on, and I have 0 in relationship building.
Right.
Fantastic. That's really wonderful as wanting to be a relational leader and connect with people. And I just remember like you put it up and I was like, but it wasn't the beauty being, again, remember, this isn't negative. None of these are negatives. It's their strengths. And so to be like, okay, who of the people that report to me and as I'm leading the team can I lean into, because it is natural, because you think that way and it's natural to you and you have strengths in that window. So that's been one of the best places for me using this tool, is like, who can fill in the gaps that it's not my natural strength to be in that space. And it just was on the relationship side. And it was like, oh man, I feel like I am good at building.
I'm sure you had one at like 6 or 7. It's fine.
It's gotta be number 6 and 7 and 8, right?
Maybe.
But I think that was a very practical way that we were able to use the tool when we began to build team awareness. And then I could be like, oh my goodness, I can go talk to them because they have gifting in this space. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and that's probably my answer. The training we're all talking about, when Aaron, you printed off some pretty big sheets that like charted out where everyone was. And what you taught us in that training was having a balance of strengths or domains is not what makes a team effective. It's having awareness of everyone else's strengths. I think that is what made this click for me to be a tremendously useful tool at work.
Can you say that again?
I'll try.
Yeah.
It was a compliment, I think, a little bit to me, so I definitely want to hear it again.
Yeah. Run it back one more time. What's important is not having a balance of strengths or domains within a team and trying to hire for that.
Yes.
But it's having awareness of the group's strengths.
There you go.
And that's what creates an effective team.
Yeah.
So you can be quote unquote imbalanced by not having a domain represented on a leadership team, for example. The solution is not go fill that. It's become aware and make decisions in that awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the example I used of like, okay, if we're trying to make a decision and none of us are, it doesn't mean that we can't access strategic thinking, but if none of us are naturally wired that way, it would be very advantageous for us to bring in someone who is, to help us look at this from a more strategic lens.
Yeah.
So,
and that can look like another teammate. It could also be outside coaching or counsel.
Yeah.
But like, you don't know to think that you need to look for that or inquire about that without the awareness.
And I mean, using you as an example, that's a great example of like, there are things that seem very natural that maybe we don't have verbiage for. Like, I think when we discovered that you have 0 strengths in relationship building, everyone was like, really? Like, because you are a naturally relational person, but if we did a deep dive into those things, there are probably other reasons that comes to the surface for you. This test would show that it's not a natural wiring. Doesn't mean you can't access it. It doesn't mean you're not good at it, but it's not a natural wiring. And so I think even that was great awareness for our entire team of like, oh, okay, like it can seem like one way from the outside, but there's so much complexity under the surface and life experiences and, just other things that make you who you are, that, the outward appearance can be very different than the internal wirings and natural bends. And I think you were a great example of that in that training. So as we close or start to close, I just wanted to talk through like, what would you say would be the easiest way to like start this conversation about StrengthsFinder? If again, like you're a business leader and we've talked about here's the value that we believe that it could bring, but what's a really practical next step that you would recommend?
If no one's ever engaged this tool before, I would buy the little book that comes with the code to take the test.
It's literally like right there.
I have one in my office. Yeah. Clay has one right in here. $20. I don't know. It's a very nominal price 20, for the awareness and value you receive from that. So if it's a brand new tool to you, you're the leader and you're just interested, I would probably do that first. Get the book. It's got a little description on each of the 34 strengths. It shows you how to leverage it, things to be aware of so that it's not a liability, how to interact with someone you lead that has a strength. Like it's pretty robust, and you can get started on that journey. So I would point someone there if they want to learn more.
Yeah, it's worth it. And the book comes with a code that you get to take the test, and then they give you your 5 strengths.
When I've said it costs to take it, that's the cost. You got to buy the book.
Right. So, but and it's also one of those, like, you don't have to read the whole book. Right. It's not a read through. They do a good job breaking up the chapters to beat all the different strengths. And so you could get I think it's a great,
it's like a reference book.
It's like a reference book. Yes. Okay. I want to ask, we have, I think in all 3 episodes of the tools, we've said they're easy on-ramps to self-awareness tools. I think we have. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, we can force rank. Because again, we want to articulate, we use all 3.
Yes.
We believe in all 3. I'm just having some fun and even inviting all the listeners and viewers in. I think we've all said that in different ways and different ones. I've been very
careful in my language because I even said, I think that Enneagram I do not think it's the easiest. And I keep ranking like LCP, EQI, things like that as like more difficult on-ramp. Like you need someone to debrief that with you. Yeah. Like it's going to cost you more than $20. Like it's like, that is not an easy on-ramp. Yeah. So if I'm force ranking the 3 from like easiest to least easy, I think that even with the cost, I am going to rank StrengthsFinder as the easiest on-ramp. And here's why. And I had some notes to talk about at some point. I used to do this on a pretty regular basis. Why I think that it is such an easy way to integrate self-development into the workplace is that you don't have to have a lot of knowledge to then lead someone else through it.
Ooh.
You literally need no knowledge because the book is doing it all for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I used to do pretty frequently when I led leaders who are leading other people who are leading other people, you know, there's like several layers down, is the top level of leaders, let's say it's you two, I'm going to buy the three of us a book. So I'm investing whatever, $45 or something, or maybe I make you buy it. So I buy my own for $15 and then you do the same. But all we're doing is taking the test, and then I'm sitting down and facilitating a discussion that is literally just like, what are your top 5 strengths? How do you see that play out? Where are the liabilities that you see? Awesome. Now, Clay, you're going to go to your team and do the same thing that I did. You don't have any expert knowledge. You didn't. And I think that the way that StrengthsFinder explains the information and the way the book is laid out, it makes for a really easy way for this to like trickle down. And that instead of you as a leader having to train everyone in your organization, or even like necessarily bring in someone else, although I'd be happy to come in and do a StrengthsFinder session for you because I really like this. It is one of the easiest tools, I believe, that you can kind of delegate that ownership to the next level leader, and then they can replicate that down. And that is, I think it's a unique way that this could integrate into your entire business as opposed to some of the other tools.
Yeah. That's our number one for entry.
Yeah, I would agree that it's the easiest. And I would actually have a demarcation that the other two are, you can absolutely implement them yourself, but it takes a lot of time and energy to do on your own. And you can do that. We value that enough to have a person, Erin, whose role is to do that. But it's like we pay her, and one of her roles, she does many things, but one of her roles that she's like measured on is bringing team development to our team. So we valued enough to create a role for it. If you don't have that role in your organization, it's just going to be, to do it well, it requires a lot of time and energy. So you can do it. Absolutely. And you can also invest in a guide to walk along you in that journey to maybe go faster.
Yeah.
And so you're really getting speed in that case, and probably more effectiveness on the ability to get everyone in your team understanding, utilizing, and getting value out of what we've talked about in this series.
Yeah.
So, but StrengthsFinders, you can probably have a pretty low lift to bring into your business. The other two, I think you're going to spend a little more time and energy on.
Agreed.
Very cool.
I think the other two, to your point, if you are facilitating this for your team, you need to have done some pre-work. You could literally have never picked up a StrengthsFinder book before. Yeah. You guys could all cut open the code from the book at the same time, take the test, and then immediately have a discussion. Yeah. And I think that is something different about it versus the other ones.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Very good.
Before you say anything else, I just realized that we have not noted this in any of our episodes, but we should have, maybe even in the first one as a precursor to this whole series. But something really practical that we do here, and we are not the originators of this, we've stolen this from other businesses, but I would highly encourage any self-development tool that you do decide to bring to your culture. I think one of the really low lift ways to get this verbiage into your culture and utilize it is see it on a regular basis. And so we have nameplates, you can call them whatever you want, but basically we have a printout that sits on everyone's desk that has ours has Myers-Briggs and it has StrengthsFinder on it. We are working to integrate Enneagram. See how I put this to words?
There you go. You did it.
And I would just encourage everyone that whatever tool you choose to use, make it visual, because if you do one learning session, it's like, okay, we did it. But if every time I walk up to Michael's desk, I have the visual reminder that he's a maximizer, either A, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I still haven't looked that up. What in the heck does that even mean? Or awareness. I'm going to remember that, and you've talked about this before, of just having that empathy and having that awareness of your teammate in a conversation. It helps it visually put it in front of me, because honestly, I don't have your top 5 strengths memorized. It's a lot to remember 5 times however many teammates we have. But if I have that visual reminder, it cues me to remember that, like, or if I'm really trying to get Clay on my side about something, I can pull some like belief strings, you know, and it's like, don't you value this on such a core level that this brings meaning to your life, you know? And so kidding about that, but I think the visual cue reminder is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other final thoughts on StrengthsFinder before we wrap up our entire series or thoughts on our series, since we're wrapping up the whole series?
I was going to say, I think I have a final thought on the series.
Yeah.
Do you have a StrengthsFinder thought that you want to close with?
Nope.
Okay. I would say you talked about good practical ways. Another practical one, and I would encourage all leaders to take this posture that if you're going to do it with your teams, and I think you should, by the way, I think you should, also offer to pay for, if it's a cost, for the spouses as well of your employees. We've talked about that numerous times, and I think that's a posture we should take as leaders of integrated businesses. And so I'd encourage you, because you don't want these tools to become divisive, and they can be that if you do not facilitate that and offer it and tell your employees that if their spouses want to take it, because if they get energized or they get excited and they gain awareness and they go home and talk about it, it could create a tension point there, which then could actually cause it to be a challenge. Pay for it. Be willing to pay the $15 for the book, or if you choose to do an Enneagram thing, or if you choose to do Myers-Briggs, like pay for the thing to help people on the journey. And so I just think that is a posture we should take, because our employees are integrated human beings. That's the reason we build integrated businesses. We believe in that principle, that it is all connected. It is all holistic. And so paying for that as well, I would encourage that posture. Yeah.
Love it. Michael, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the series, we covered 3 things that could maybe be overwhelming. I would, if you listen to the whole series, maybe just pick one to explore deeper. Don't try to, we have been implementing these in our business for 10 years. Yep. So it's been a 10-year journey, and we've built over time.
Yeah, they didn't all start on day one.
So don't go think you need, like, in the next 6 months to be using the 3 of these in your business if you're currently at 0. Just pick one to go deeper on. And then over time you can build out more if that is something that would serve your business.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good.
Well, the verse that I chose for the episode, I think might actually be a good wrap up for the whole series. And I did not choose a verse. I just chose a general section of the Bible. So you're welcome.
Yes.
But I was just looking through Exodus, and you used a verse. Somebody talked about a verse from Exodus at some point recently, but I think the dynamic of Moses and Aaron is a really great picture of God acknowledging that he himself has created us with different strengths and different unique abilities and passions, and therefore also different weaknesses, things like that. And I think that the story of Moses and Aaron paints a really good picture of how we've probably said this a dozen times in these 4 episodes, but I think it's worth saying, because I think it's probably the biggest takeaway is it's more valuable to know and leverage your inherent strengths versus putting all of your effort into trying to improve your weaknesses or overcome them. Know about your weaknesses for sure, but again, the value of the knowledge versus the trying to compensate. And so I think Moses and Aaron are a great picture of that, because God didn't say, okay, Moses, like, I created you this way, but like, I missed it there. I made a mistake there. So let me fix some of those things. He said, I have a bigger picture plan here, and it involves someone else. And I think, again, as we talk about integrating self-development into the workplace, we've said it so many times, but as a leadership team or as a small business or as a specific team that you work on, the goal is not, and God didn't design us with the thought that, like, you guys are going to be lacking, so you better figure out how to fix that. It's, I designed you in a specific way, so know more about that. Be more educated, more aware about that, and you can still accomplish what you're setting out to accomplish with more awareness, not because you are needing to fill gaps. So go read Exodus. That's a good way to wrap up the whole series, the whole book. All right, it's very entertaining, very interesting. So that wraps up our series on self-development in the workplace.
Yeah, it does.
We should have some really cool outro music for that. Talking to you, producer. All right. Any final thoughts in 45 seconds?
No. Thank you for joining us in this series. We'll transition to some guest episodes next.
Yep.
And then we'll come back soon, internal again after those guest episodes. But as always, we appreciate you viewing and listening. And until next week, choose life. Thanks for tuning into our show. If you want to learn more about how you can integrate your faith into your business, download our integrated business guide for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.